Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Explicit Measures Podcast. Explicit Measures Podcast. Trying to say it right there. A little bit of a tongue tying. Oh my goodness, I'm already I'm off kilter this morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We're glad to have you back on this chilly morning here out of Milwaukee and Chicago. Hey, Tommy, how's it going?
I'm doing excellent, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite things today. So very quickly, let's get into our main topic, what we're going to talk about. Our main topic today will be one-click notebooks. Maybe this is a clickbait title, Tommy. I don't know.
Sounds like it.
Sounds like it. So we're gonna talk about one-click notebooks today, and we'll unpack what those mean. What are we talking about here for our main topic? But before we get into our main topic, Tommy, you have found a really interesting news article that I think we have to share with our community. This is impressive. What's going on here, Tommy? What did you find?
So this is an article by Cannell on the Fabric blog. How does Fabric make Spark notebooks instant? And we know that if you ever done Spark before in Fabric, you know that it takes a little time, a few minutes to start, kind of slowing down, and you're just if you want to test anything out, and that pre-warming kind of wastes also compute as well. However, there's a solution now with what's called the Fabric forecasting service, which keeps a small fleet of Spark clusters pre-warmed for near instant starts. Each time a cluster is used, a new one is created to refill the pool. And there's some things with time series forecasting to predict when their demand is going to be. So this is pretty crazy, Mike, because this actually allows us to kind of treat the Spark engine just like you would if you were running a Python notebook. Just get it done and start running.
This is impressive to me, Tommy. So like just in the first kind of paragraph they're talking about here, think about what's happening here. Like again, my mind goes toward the architect side of this thing, right? Tommy, you and I, what region are you in Power BI? Are you in the North Central region?
No, I'm East 2 because that's where I created my tenant years ago.
Oh, okay. So your tenant for Power BI is in East 2. So think about this keeping this cluster of Fabric, enabled Spark machines warm. How many regions are there? All these regions have to have some sort of forecasting per region as to what's going on with each of these models. So, Mike's over here in North Central, that's my region, North Central US. And when I get close to warming up that Spark cluster, it's got to know, hey, these are the tenants. This is the traditional usage. Here's where they ramp up and start using notebooks. And so they can get you that sub, couple minute, couple second load up time for these Spark clusters. This is amazing. Yeah. I'm very impressed by this architecture, and I'm happy Microsoft is sharing this because this is a really neat way of thinking about like what's being built behind the scenes to make your experience fast and efficient.
And I'm not sure if this is something they just worked on or they're letting us know that they've been hey, we've been doing this the whole time. You just didn't know. But this is always the problem I would Spark, especially for someone who's a tester, wants to test things out, or is dumb as I am, where it's like, I just want to figure this out, see if it works, and then go from there. But the Spark, again, would take a while. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, let's pull this down here a little bit. So there's a couple caveats here that I do want to point out, right? If you're using the starter pool, right, the pools that Microsoft recommends you use, or the ones that come out of the box, right? The starter pool sessions are faster to start because those are the ones that Microsoft is warming up. Note here in the documentation, it talks about like if you have like custom libraries, a typical cold start, which means you have custom libraries, you're going to cold start the VMs, turn them on, get them going. You're waiting anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes plus any time to install the libraries. So anytime you're doing things like that, that's a very slow experience for you to get those VMs up and running. So that's one area that I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, you're taking things that used to take 2 to 5 minutes to run and you're making them instantly available for me. That's a huge win because I don't want to wait for 2 to 5 minutes to have something work or go do something. That makes a lot of sense.
1,000%.
They have a really interesting diagram here as well. They have like users and then user jobs and then a pool of clusters. So they actually have a really kind of interesting diagram here about like which pools are low latency and they're fast and which ones need a little bit more time to run up. Really like that as well. So I'm very pleased here. I think this is a very forward way of thinking about Microsoft providing like the Fabric and the Spark experience as a very easy to use service. So very much enjoy this. I thought this was a really very detailed article. There's a lot more in there that you can read too as well. The link for this article will be in the description down below. Any other comments on that one? Any other?
No, this is something, and just a quick note, this is works best with the default starter pool. So if you have your own, pool or your own environment where you have your own libraries that you've added or Spark properties, it can take a few minutes longer, or a few moments longer rather. But the fast start by default is with the starter pool, no extra libraries, starts in a few seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big win. I don't like waiting around, first and foremost, for just turn on. I want to click that button. I want the cluster to turn on. If I hit the notebook, I need the notebook to be on right away. I also have to imagine too, Tommy, there's two parts of this world, right? There's the world of, Tommy, you're the one inside Fabric building a notebook. And then there's another side of the world, which is, these are all the scheduled jobs that we have, right? These are jobs that are running a pipeline that contains a notebook in them. And so therefore you can basically predict very reliably how many clusters do you need on and running at what time, so that those can turn on very quickly. So I like this idea. I think this is really good.
Dude, I love this. And I think a lot of people aren't even aware this happened. So there's nothing to turn on, I believe, correct?
There's no setting. This is just, again, I think this is more of like an informational piece, right? This is a discovery article that talks about how Microsoft is actively using predictions, forecasting, to help the system build the right machines to turn them on and use them before users actually turn on those machines. So I think this is a great idea. I love it.
Love it.
Again, this is one of the things you get as an advantage with going mega scale with Microsoft. They can just build this stuff behind the scenes, and then it just makes your experience just that much easier to use. So I love it. All right, that being said, I don't have any other news items, Tommy. Let's go into our actual topic of the day. Let's talk about one-click notebooks, if you don't mind.
Oh, I think I would love to.
Oh, we have a caller on the line here. Let's bring in our caller. I'd like to bring back to our callers area, Emily. Welcome back to the show. We're very happy to have you back on the show today and talking about this feature called one-click notebooks inside Microsoft semantic models.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me back on the podcast. Super excited to be here.
So let's kind of frame out like what these things are. So how do we get to them? I think for our audience who may have used them or may not, this is really centered around modeling for the web. So inside modeling for the web, you can go to the PowerBI.com service, click on edit model or click on a semantic model. You're then immediately taken into the semantic model editing window, and you'll notice on the home ribbon about halfway down, there's model health. And so these notebooks that we're seeing appear here are in the model health section of the home ribbon. And so, Emily, where did this come from? Is this a feature that was like highly demanded? Did the community ask this? What was going on here to like make this like part of like the modeling for web experience?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's really two reasons why this kind of came to be, this feature. One is because we just hear time and time again that having your model get in a good state, following best practices, having good performance is a pretty like time intensive process. So any additional tools that can help get your model in a good state and like learn what you can do to improve your model is really helpful. And like, I think a lot of the work that's been done for these notebooks is just thanks to community member involvement, especially folks like Daniel Odeker with his work on Best Practice Analyzer and Marco Russo with Vertipack Analyzer. So we've seen the community love those tools. We wanted to bring those functionality in a more discoverable way for those users. So that's kind of part one. And then part two is we just wanted more people to become aware of the power of using semantic link in notebooks with Power BI scenarios and make it easier than ever to get started using them, kind of increase awareness that like, hey, this can really help you bring your semantic models and your different Power BI solutions to the next level with even more flexibility. So that was kind of the second part, is helping make it clear, like, look, with like notebooks and semantic link as the way to connect to your semantic models, you can do amazing things like Best Practice Analyzer, like Memory Analyzer. And I think a lot of that really stemmed from Michael Kowalski's work with Semantic Link Labs, helping show like with helper notebooks, amazing things you could do with your models and the power of notebooks.
So I really like these features. So let's talk about how do we get these things actioned? Like, so what happens? You go into the semantic modeler. When you click on these buttons, it's actually taking you out of the edit semantic model experience, and it's building you a brand new clean notebook. And I'm assuming, Emily, you're storing these somewhere on the Microsoft side of like keeping these updated, and anything that Michael Kowalski updates, like they're already using semantic link. Again, that's what you're using, the import senpy.fabric as a fabric experience. But it's also doing more than just, running the notebook. It's running the notebook. It's writing its own command cells. It's automatically adding the data set, the workspace, and automatically putting them into the notebook for you. There's instructions. There's like details. It has, with that, you can actually do the view experience, and you have a table of contents. There's a very lightweight table of contents that comes with this as well. So just that one click gets you into a space where you can start using performance analyzer or best practice analyzer on top of the semantic model. And I got to give a major shout out to your point as well here, Emily. Michael Kowalski has like spearheaded this whole like Microsoft's version of a best practice analyzer. I will give clear shout out. This came from Tabular Editor. Tabular Editor was the original best practice analyzer idea, but Michael Kowalski kind of took it to this next level, making custom rules, defining rules, actually having a Git repo where all the custom rules exist. All those things that he's building out as well. I'm going to go kick this over to Tommy. Tommy, to you, like, you use, I think, best practice analyzer out of all of my friends who do this stuff, probably the most. Like,
Dude.
Give us some vibe here, Tommy Brown, how BPA is important. Like, why do we care about this stuff?
So best practice analyzer, one, from an individual point of view, just to optimize your model and make sure you're doing the right things from an accuracy point of view. It I call it the Indiana Jones of your semantic model. If you remember in the movies, where whenever he went farther down the cave, he always left a little device or symbol to know where he was and kind of the rope to get back. And a lot of times when we develop our semantic models, they can kind of get a little convoluted. So can you find your way back to the source, back outside the cave? And best practice analyzers is a great part of that. Even better with that, you can use best practice analyzer across your tenant and, in a sense, get a rating to see from an admin point of view, from an adoption point of view, hey, what semantic models in our tenant are not, adhering to explicit measures, not adhering to certain factors. And we actually had a rating system around those best practice rules. And we would say, like, okay, who's doing quality, who needs work? And it was all using Scanner API and best practice analyzers. And this was before Fabric, so this was a lot of PowerShell.
And now that's kind of gone. Like, so again, it's using a function. So let me talk through a little bit of the notebook here.
Yeah.
I'm going to gush about the notebook here slightly. Like, the notebook is 2 cells deep. Import the semantic link library. So it's going to install semantic link labs directly on your cluster on that notebook that you're building there. And then right behind it, it's going to run the BPA analyzer. So it's going to be run model BPA. It's going to pass in the data set and then the workspace. And what that does is it combs through that. And there's a whole bunch of documentation around what BPA does. There's a number of rules. Let's see if I can pull the documentation here. Let's see here. Where does Michael Kowalski list all of his rules? Do you know where that is, Tommy?
That's actually a file. So it's not like a markdown at all. So it's actually a file that you download from the one of the Tablet Editor sites. So it's very convoluted, but there's a lot to it.
But when you run the notebook, though, inside of BPA, where do those rules come from? Aren't those just already built into BPA inside the Fabric notebook?
I think it's coming from a GitHub URL, a GitHub link.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, Tommy, because I believe that the Semantic Link Labs actually has the run BPA model.
Yeah.
There's like a standard set of like default rules that he's applying. For example, let me give you a rule. In a relationship between 2 different tables, right? I have a fact table and a dimension. You don't need the columns shown in both directions, right? So the dimension is having a relationship down to the fact table. And one of the rules that applies is, hey, you don't need to have those both shown. You might want to hide one of them. Typically, you would hide the one in the dimension table or in the fact table and maybe expose the one in the dimension table. That's usually what you would build when you're working across relationships. Another rule that the best practice analyzer goes after is bidirectional relationships. It kind of discourages them. It'll identify where it finds bidirectional relationship and says, look, is there any way you can build your report so you don't have a bidirectional relationship? You should really go for a one-to-many type relationships. Again, semantic models are flexible. You can kind of build what you need to based on your use case, but there are best practices that don't really fit that, and you want to kind of move away from that. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. I'm trying to pull up where that's actually coming from, some of the rules, but those are all, like I said, there's ones based on formatting, performance, and just optimization.
Emily, any thoughts from your side around, do you use, you're at Microsoft, you're building a lot of new features. Do you use BPA on top of models? I mean, I'm sure you probably play with it a couple times. Anything you found there on the BPA side of things?
Yeah, no, I definitely use it, especially like now that it's easier than ever. We do call it one-click notebooks, but I will admit it's actually 2 clicks. It's one to create the notebook for you with everything
That's
configured.
true.
Then you have to click run all, so there's a second click.
That's true. That's true.
But it is so helpful with getting your models in a good state. It was something that like Zoe and I demoed throughout our FabCon session, where we were kind of getting competitive to see who could get their models into a state with less of the like warnings and like issues that were called out in Best Practice Analyzer. So it was really fun and helpful to use for things like that. But yeah, I think it's a really good tool, and I would highly recommend that people try it out for their semantic models.
I do agree there. And again, I'll go back to like the litany of things that Michael Kowalski has like built into this Best Practice Analyzer already. It's really useful to go look at what he's building here and seeing, again, the rules that he's supplying. We'll also make sure we put in the description here. Tommy, I'll have you put it in our notes here so we can make sure we put it in the description as well. We'll be make sure you go look at Michael Kowalski's Git repo around Best Business Practice Analyzer items. There's a lot of really rich materials there. Semantic Link Labs. There's a couple other things that are in play here for this particular notebook. Semantic Link is by default built into notebooks. And so the reason why this is so nice is you can handle all the authorization of the notebook connecting to Fabric. So to do what the BPA Best Practice Analyzer is doing, you need to be able to authorize, does Michael have access to this semantic model? And the nice part about Semantic Link Labs or Semantic Link is it handles that for you. It already authorizes me, it knows who I am, and it can run all the APIs directly talking to the models and things and use that all behind the scenes inside Semantic Links. That's kind of another advantage why you'd want to use these one-click notebooks is because you don't have to write any extra code. It just kind of works out of the box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was the goal of the one-click notebooks, is to make it work out of the box, easy to get started. It really, though, is like just the launching point is just for your one semantic model you clicked from in that workspace. But Michael Kowalski's Semantic Link Labs has a lot of other rich capabilities and other helper notebooks you can bring in from there if you want to do things like what we talked about earlier, like look across your full tenant at best practices across all of them. Like there's so many rich capabilities and flexibility that you can take these notebooks with and do even more than what was provided out of the box.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, Emily. Is this run BPA function that's using the notebook? And again, this may be just, we'll have to go do a little homework on this one. Is it running inside Semantic Link Labs or is it running in just Semantic Link? Was this a feature that actually got moved to Semantic Link? Yes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did bring the run BPA function and the one used for memory analyzer to Semantic Link.
Makes sense.
But there's a wealth of things in just Semantic Link Labs, which is more kind of the open source, like more experimental type environment that I would recommend checking out, like in addition to the ones that we brought over to Semantic Link.
Okay. And let me give some other context here. This is more of like a little rabbit trail here slightly, is Michael Kowalski has been building this thing called Semantic Link Labs, which is like the early prototype of features that may make themselves into Semantic Link. Mm-hmm. Both of these two features work really well together. And one of the things that's out of the box when you're using notebooks inside Microsoft Fabric is you have to install something. If you're doing Semantic Link, already installed by default. It's already there. There's no Tommy, we've done a couple things back in Fabric days where we're working with notebooks. If you're going to use Semantic Link Labs, you use this feature called pip install. So you do a pip and you install, and that's basically a command line that you're running to install the Semantic Link Labs feature into your model. And so you need to run that in order to install Semantic Link Labs. For Semantic Link, you do not. Already installed by default. Another couple. So I'm going to just pause right there. Any comments, Tommy, around what we're talking about so far?
No, honestly, right now, there's a question for you in terms of when we look at the community notebooks as well. One of the big things
hold on.
that
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
you're getting ahead of yourself.
BPA.
We're gonna get there.
BPA.
Let's start. Let's do BPA first. Any more thoughts around BPA before you skip to the new thought?
No, I think we're great on BPA.
Okay. The last thing I'll just kind of point out here as well with the BPA notebook is Michael Kowalski has built inside this BPA piece, it's actually building HTML, like an HTML section of the page here for you. And so he has features of the best business practice analyzer by formatting, maintenance options, and performance options. So even when you run these one-click notebooks, you're getting the ability to see, are there formatting issues? Do we have maintenance level problems? Or is there potentially performance-related issues? He's categorized all the tests against the model to say if it's good or not. And so, look, for example, I just ran one on a model that I have here. I have a date table in my model, but I did not mark it as a date table. So it's not marked as a date table, it's just there. And so one of the rules goes into your model and says, hey, I'm going to test your model and see if you have a date table, or if there's a date-like table in there named dim date. Should you mark it as the date table? So best practice would be mark that as your date table, and then it will help the model a little bit. Another couple of warnings it gave me here on my model: do not use floating point data types. So it's actually checking the different data on each column and making sure that it understands how it stores it. And then there's recommendations as to not do that. I have a couple other here. There's another couple performance improvements here when you're working with Excel. The property around is set is available in MDX to false on non-attributed columns. Again, very nuanced, but like now you can check for that. And so this is just one model. Imagine running this over like hundreds, thousands, like across your tenant. Every time you're doing a deployment, should you be running some of these checks? Yeah, I probably think so. So I really like these notebooks from a clear starting up point. You can easily start with what it's building here and expand and take it from there. Any other thoughts around this particular notebook? And then we'll move on to the next one.
I think it's time because a lot of people are used to, or at least somewhat familiar with, the best practice analyzer. But the next one, Mike,
this
is a bit new.
Okay, so Tommy, you want to talk about this next one?
Yeah, so the model memory analyzer is another one of the buttons on the UI, which actually shows you not just what you're doing right in terms of performance optimization, your formatting, but actually just simple statistics around your memory and the storage and around the objects in that semantic model, such as what are the table names, columns, hierarchies, and relationships. The statistics run the memory, can be used to look at basically your performance, look at where you can reduce memory, and really just almost close to the Vertipack analyzer, I would say, as the closest thing you'd think of. So more or less the Vertipack analyzer without calling it the Vertipack analyzer. So allowing you to simply see the data size, your dictionary size. If you've ever run the Vertipack analyzer, whether in Excel or DAX Studio, or in Tableau Editor 3, being able to see where from a column, table, or relationships, where your biggest bloat is.
I think this is incredible. I've been in a couple of classes from Marco Russo in the past where he says he helps people optimize. So one of the things he does is consulting. And Marco will go into a class and say, look, I don't even need to see actual data in your model. All you need to send me is the Vertipack thing. And he'll immediately know, oh yeah, the cardinality in this column is too high. You've got relationships in a weird place here that's going to cause performance issues. He knows already what that looks like. And I think when your models are small, you have a lot of flexibility in making weird stuff, maybe, right? Bidirectional relationships. Your data isn't large enough to really cause it to slow down. So I think the semantic model is so fast that in those smaller models, you don't really recognize a performance hit. The larger you get, the more you have to be careful around speed and performance and building good DAX. And I think this is where, when you start increasing the size of your models and things start returning very slowly, that's when I want to start applying the memory analyzer. What do you think, Emily? What's your thoughts on this one? Have you seen that treated like that pattern as well?
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that pattern. I think that we've just heard so many people across the community finding so much value in having this data available about their like memory and performance statistics of their model. So that was kind of the goal, is just to make it easier than ever to get started in seeing that, especially in the web. And just again, huge thank you to folks in the community, especially Marco Russo on this one, of helping pave the way to giving people access to this information.
Column statistics is a major win. Tommy, do you have any examples of like models that you've seen where you like what did you find and how did you fix the size of the model?
Almost cheating here, Mike, because most models.
Okay, go ahead. It's allowed.
No, yeah. So honestly, one of the easiest ways on any model, especially if I was taking it over, was looking at the Vertipack analyzer and looking at the column and table. In most cases, the usual suspects was someone was using, they had an email column or a date time, and it was not being used anywhere in the model. They weren't using it for relationships. They weren't using it for any DAX statements. It was just date and time that was just kind of being run there. And a lot of times a few of those columns can run up 40% of the entire model's dictionary size. Just that one column. And so once you remove that, you remove some of those unnecessary text columns, like, URL, if you're not using it, or email address, if you're not using it. It saves a ton of space. So that's one of the things I look at anytime I would take a new model, or even on my, I'm actually have a model I'm going to look at today, and just kind of take a look and say, okay, what can we do? What is really unnecessary? That's the biggest thing, is to take a look at, do I really need that column? Especially since it's 25% of my entire semantic models, data dictionary size.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And that's a big thing for me.
So I'm going to give you one other example that I've used in the past that I have found it's not a bad thing. It's just people are just unaware, I guess, would be more of what it is. Have you ever seen the temporary tables for date time columns or date columns? So when you have auto date time turned on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's
right. Okay. So in a smaller, going back to like my analogy of like the smaller models, in smaller models, when you have just a handful of columns and a handful of tables, like there's maybe 2 or 3 date columns in there. When your model gets larger and there's a lot more date columns, especially if you're talking like manufacturing or shipping or logistics, right? There's going to be a order on date. There's going to be a ship on date. There's going to be order received date. Like one fact table could have 3 or 4 date tables in it. When auto date time is turned on, every single additional date column gets its whole brand new date table, which is not bad. It just exists. But you're not exposed to that in like Power BI Desktop. Like Desktop doesn't show you all the hidden tables that are there, but they do come out when you have the memory analyzer. You can see those tables appearing. Now, having more date tables, I'm not too worried about. Not a problem. However, people are tricky and data systems are sneaky. So, and what I mean by this is I've experienced models where data was being loaded from a source system, and sometimes there's not a date for something, but the system requires a date to be populated in the field. And so sometimes you'll see 1/1/1900, or you'll see 1/1/99999, right, as the year. So what's happening in these data columns is the semantic model is grabbing the smallest date and the largest date and building a date calendar for every single day that it finds between that min and max date. Nice that it does it for you automatically, but if you bring in bad data inside the date column, right, you now have built a date calendar that has like hundreds of thousands of dates in it without even really knowing, right? And so it's that type of, like, that's where I've seen, to your point, Tommy, I've seen 30, 40, 50% of a model just taken up by date calendars because we had a lot of date fields, and we're now building these monolithic date tables that we really don't need, right? Instead, we want to build like metered tables of what we really want to have from the data model. So that's one big example here of, in making a model easy for you to build as a developer, calendar auto on, you actually make it very expensive and very bloated. It could be really large. I mean, there's gigabytes, maybe megabytes, hundreds of megabytes, maybe taken up by these date tables that could be removed from there as well. All right, Emily, any examples that you've seen where you like to see Business Practice Analyzer do some helpful things, or what have you identified in some models that maybe BPA helped you out with?
Yeah, I think that the date table one is probably one of the most common ones we hear. So I was very unsurprised to hear that one. Yeah, I mean, there's like a wealth of a lot of different pieces, both in the memory analyzer, best practice analyzer. I think a lot of formatting things also is one I see all the time in best practice analyzer specifically.
That's true too. Yeah. I'd agree with that one. Formatting incorrectly with the wrong kind of data columns. That's another big one.
Exactly.
Another one that I think I see a lot of is high cardinality columns. Have you seen that one's okay? Yeah, you're not. You're okay, good.
Yeah, no, I think that one comes up pretty often.
All the time. So for those who are not familiar with when I say high cardinality columns, right? So you imagine a dimension table, and we have, let's say products, right, in our dimension table. Maybe we have 1,000 products. When you flip over to your factual table, the one that has the relationship through to your fact table, you have product, date, time, like all these different things. So the more dimensional pieces you supply to that main table, the more information that's going to be supplied to it. It's going to be this larger, more intense table. And so when you have so much granularity, you can step back and say, what are we trying to analyze here? Right. So another example would be is like time ranges, right? I've had a customer say, we need 10 years of data. Okay.
All right.
Fine. Happy to supply you with 10 years of data in your semantic models. Let's talk about the granularity of the data. And so initially the customer had built like all the way down to like the minute transaction level of like what stuff was being sold and being bought by. So 10 years of data down to the minute level by products with all these other dimensions, it caused the fact table to get like extremely large with really high cardinality columns. And so what we found is we needed to reduce some cardinality in those main tables and even producing some shortcuts, maybe aggregation tables to some degree to like really help you. Like if I want to look at data, I'm not going to go back and look at every single minute for 10 years, right? I'm going to look at monthly sales, right? Weekly sales by product. So you can drop the granularity of your tables down to something that's much higher, like day level. Let's sum up all the items that were sold on this day. And that makes a big difference, which can really reduce your model. And I think my first time interacting with this one, Tommy, do you remember when we saw, I think you were there with me at the time. We were at a Microsoft Fabric, maybe it was Data Insight Summit, something way back in the day. And Christian Wade was talking about, let me show you a query that can handle 1 billion rows.
Remember this? The taxi, right?
Yeah, the data taxi tables. So yes. Christian shows up and says, hey, let me show you a query that will run across 1 billion rows of data. And what they were doing, there's this auto aggregation experience that was like building tables and aggregating them up. And so even though I was showing lots of data for like 1 billion rows, you could actually aggregate that information up and group it by month or by year, and it made it a lot easier to digest. So these are, I think, tricks of the trade that we have to really know like what our audience is doing, but that's where the memory analyzer comes in as well. Any other thing, Tommy, that you'd want to point out here about memory analyzer?
I mean, like I said, it is really the Vertipack analyzer that you're used to in the external tools. For me, Mike, it is a pretty essential part that I love actually now having in Fabric. And Mike, is one of the ideas here too, and actually I'll pose this to both of you. One of the ideas here, not just for this to be for the individual, where I'm viewing my semantic model on the web, but also from a collaborative point of view, because really anything that is in Fabric becomes much more, or the potential for something to have a process or work in a team. Like best practice before, if I wanted to really run anything, I had to deal with, my own machine. But is one of the kind of ideas to add this as a Semantic Link Labs for it to be either A, easier to access, or B, more from a community or team point of view?
I'm not sure I understand where you're going, Tommy. If you're saying like the one-click notebooks, like what's the need here? Is that what you're going?
Yeah, after? the bigger need. Was one of the kind of opportunities here. One of the reasons why it's actually built right as a button into the semantic model is we actually want to build this for teams to go through rather than just like for myself, Mike. I can easily go and open Tableau Editor on my computer, but that's me as an individual. There's no me reviewing my.
Okay, I think I get where you're going with this, Tommy. So. One thing that I've seen, and again, maybe Emily, you've seen this kind of feedback as well, is, okay, Tommy, you're an expert, you're a pro developer on top of semantic models. Think about what tools you're allowed to use as your organization. Tommy, you're a professional. You got your own computer, you have full access. Like you can install anything you want on your machine. Some customers don't allow them to install like DAX Studio, right? So when you remove that away from pro developers, I think there's an argument to say here, Microsoft should be providing all the tooling we need to do all the performance things. And again, I know that
Wholeheartedly agree with that.
your team is only so big, right? There's only so many features we can focus on, right? Some of this is entry level people starting with a beginner experience, but also there's some pro dev experiences as well. So, Microsoft, this is why some of these tools evolved. As ALM Toolkit, DAX Studio, Tabular Editor, right? These tools enrich the experience we already have with Fabric. Nothing wrong with that. But some organizations say, look, we're not going to let you install anything. And if it doesn't come from Fabric, if it's not in the existing ecosystem, we're not going to let you do it. And so, Tommy, this is where I would say, in the semantic link makes a lot of sense here, is because it's already built in. It's a single one-click notebook, and then I don't have to install any new tools. It's already available to me. And so internally, Tommy, like you as the expert, I would work with our team and say, let's explain why this tool is important. Let's go through and run a couple of these. It becomes part of your process as a company to help them evaluate like what's a good model. Where is things more efficient? Another story that I have here around when do I need to really start tuning models is when models start getting big and when you start running up against the threshold limit of that 1 gigabyte model size. So while this is in Fabric, a little bit different story here, but like if you're in a pro user account or in a pro workspace, you need to be able to run that model and figure out, okay, does that model exist below the 1 gig threshold? Because you have a 1 gig limit size on models you can serve in that workspace. So if you're pulling a lot of data in, if you're pushing the boundaries, you're going to get model failures to not refresh, to not load, if you're pushing that upper boundary of how big the model is. So I think another use case here, Tommy, is you're going to need to know the size of that model before you upgrade everyone to premium per user to get bigger size models. Does that make sense there? There's a lot of like negotiation we're doing there.
Yes, 1,000%.
One thing I'll also point out here, Tommy, are you familiar with the temperature of the model? Have you seen that before?
Oh, yes, I have. I'm trying to remember where, but you're gonna have to remind me because that's not in our notes. But I've heard that. Okay,
sounds good. So one thing that's really interesting to me. So, and again, Emily, you'll know this as well, kind of from like the Microsoft side. Like as you use the semantic model, there's this column called temperature, and the temperature is like if let's say, for example, I have a semantic model and I run a Power BI report. When those visuals access data columns from the semantic model, those columns, quote unquote, heat up with a temperature. And one way to see the performance of your model is, or even evaluating, does this model need to have, how do I say this? What's being used from the model, right? Which columns are being leveraged? And so as you hit the individual columns in the model, the temperature rises. And so what you can do with the BPA or the model memory analyzer is if your model is regularly being used, like on a production model, you can run this, go get all the list of all the columns and their associated temperatures. So imagine for me with you, and we've done this on a client where we had a discovery session. We were trying to figure out, okay, who's using this model and what are they using in the model? It's quite complex to do that because you can have the reports, you can know what columns are linked from the reports, but if someone never visits page 2 and only uses page 1, you may not use all the elements of the model. And so that's where this column temperature comes into play here, where you can actually look at in points in time, the temperature of all the columns. Now, also with temperature, think about it this way. If I hit the column, I heat it up. Over time, that column slowly cools down until it's no longer being used. And eventually, the temperature drops off altogether for that semantic model. So as you're running the models, these temperatures of columns are kind of going up and down dynamically. And in the morning, the temperatures may be different in the afternoon. The temperatures might be different around noon. Tommy, you do a lot of advertising or marketing or whatever. At the end of the month, when you're trying to figure out spend and budgets, there may be a lot more hits on these models. So if you use this memory analyzer and capture many points in time of the temperature of the columns, you can actually get like a really interesting picture as to what people are using from the models when they're using them. So Gilbert, I'll got to call out another community member here. Gilbert over at Formu has done a really good job explaining like what is the column temperature? How would you get it? How can you use best business practice analyzer or the memory analyzer to go get that information out of the model and show it to you and store it somewhere for later. So again, another thing I'll point out here about these notebooks are the notebooks are making data. They're data frames. You can store them as a data frame. You can go save this data for later. So let's go back to the memory analyzer again, right? You have X number of tables. You can see in the little HTML page that Michael Kowalski gives you, it tells you the dictionary size, it tells you the total size, the row count. There's a lot of statistics that come out of those tables. Well, you could save that every time you do a deployment. And so you could actually watch your tables grow over time, or size your tables, or figure out which one's growing faster than others. So again, using this built-in tool, you can automatically start snapshotting like historical values of how efficient your model is being built. So that's another use case there as well.
That Mike, that kind of goes on, unless you had anything more with the memory analyzer about really not just what's already those two buttons, but there's a third button on that semantic model page.
There's one more in there.
And do you want to get to that? Is there anything else you wanted to say when it came?
Oh, I'm good with the memory. I could spend all day long on memory analyzer and give you examples of like what works and what. Regardless, I like the fact it gets a two-click notebook. I'll put air quotes here. Two-click notebook for you on the memory analyzer. So you can go get that already, click memory analyzer, and then you hit run on the notebook, and then it'll run the analysis on that particular semantic model. So, all right, Tommy, last feature.
Last feature is the community notebooks. And this is not just the only ones that are allowed, but these are the ones that are actually in the Microsoft Notebook Gallery. Or the notebook gallery on the Power BI forum. Remember galleries, Mike? They were great back in the day. So
they're good. It's definitely good to have examples. And one of the things I'm very happy about what's happening here in the gallery, people are putting direct links to a URL of a notebook. You can see the code that people are writing and evaluate it directly from there. So that's I really like this idea of being able to have notebooks that exist for people where they can go download them and interact with them directly. A lot of people are putting like GitHub links on the community page as well. So you can go right from the semantic model, go right to the shortcut to the gallery. And let's, Tommy, let's pick out some things that are here. Michael Kowalski has a number of ones at the very beginning, like the oldest ones, where he's talking about, I think there's like 6 pages now of notebooks, but he's got, hey, you're doing a direct link migration to semantic link labs, right? If you want to do some migration pieces, he's got that figured out. He has a delta analyzer. So like you have delta tables, you want to understand where your lakehouse tables are, how big they are, other things there as well. He has a best practice analyzer report. So not only can you run BPA, you can build a semantic model. And from there, you can build a pre-built report also using the BPA experience. So that's another one as well. So a lot of useful tools in addition to like just cool stuff.
And Mike, the thing is, it's not just Kowalski. The one thing I really like about it being in the gallery and also some people linking to GitHub is all you have to do in the gallery is simply sort by the top kudos. So I'm looking at some of these here as well in the gallery because there's a ton. And like Nadine Hedge has a few that are like the top kudos notebooks based on the community, which one is we're looking at here is the simple looking at the strategy for resiliency and availability for a report. It looks at the backup for reports across workspaces. So it simply allows your report and the semantic model to be backed up. A few other ones that are here as well is looking at the semantic model lineage, a notebook to analyze and visualize dependencies across semantic models. Which is, again, just simply one notebook you can upload. Also connections lineage, looking at data connection dependencies across Microsoft Fabric workspaces. So there's a ton here, especially when you're looking at, and this GitHub repo has a ton of different semantic or notebooks that you can upload as well. So there's a ton here from the community that you can just test out. They're also on GitHub. They're not necessarily only in the gallery.
Yeah, that's true too, Tommy. Again, a lot of people here are putting notebooks that they're finding valuable. Shannon Lindsay is the individual who's kind of running the community here. So I got to give Shannon mad kudos on this one as well. Having any place where we can collectively grab, usage of things or pulling data together. There's actually a couple competitions that are even out there now. So you can actually go out and use this. They did this competition around cities of tomorrow. smart urban sustainability planning, right? So people are building like notebooks around how they would use this. They have a data source that's out there. So you're going to see a lot of other examples here. There's actually some competition pieces. Other things I see here are useful. Why not ingest all of your docs from SharePoint into the Lakehouse? Someone built a notebook for that. Could be useful for someone. Power BI access audit, right? Where are all your workspaces? What users do you have? Let's run the notebook, collect all the data, and put it in a lakehouse. So that's another thing that you can use here as well. So there's a lot of really interesting things here. One that I like is Delta table statistics and maintenance of Delta tables. That's a great example of something you'd want to use, saving yourself some more space and memory there as well. So anyways, I like the community pieces. You will have to dig around. Let me just be cautious. It's not like you can't just go search. It's not the greatest search that you have out there. But definitely look for like the top kudos, look for the most featured notebooks. Those will also help you find useful notebooks on that space as well. All right. Well, Emily, I got to say thank you very much for this other feature that you guys have enabled. I know this has been like a team effort. I know you're the one who's just making the buttons show up, having them there in the model editor for web. So we really do appreciate it. These are really great features. If you're not using today these notebooks, I'd highly recommend you go to the service, check out Best Practice Analyzer, check out Memory Analyzer, and look at the notebooks that are in the community. I think these will enrich a lot of your developer experiences around creating semantic models and make you a better person for building data models and things. Tommy, any final ones you want to kind of capture off here as well?
No, honestly, I do have a starred list in my GitHub account that's just a bunch of Fabric repos. Some of them are notebooks, some are not. But honestly, there's a ton more than just what's in the gallery as well.
I would agree with that as well. Emily, any final thoughts of what you're thinking here around these notebooks and two-click experiences as we kind of like clickbaited you into this video, this episode?
No, love the clickbait. And like you said, like I was just, involved in making the buttons appear, but this really from the beginning started from a community-driven initiative. We saw so many folks in the community excited about what Michael Kowalski was doing, what already has been developed for so many years by people like Marco Russo, Daniel Oettinger. We've seen so many like different innovations using semantic link and notebooks that we just wanted to make this more readily known and easier to get started, because a lot of these helper notebooks do make it easy. If you just have your like semantic model like already ready, you can just plug in that information into the function and hit run. So we just wanted to make it easier for you to get started and for folks in the community to upload and share their own notebooks that they found helpful and discover notebooks from others. So this is a community initiative from the beginning. We are so excited to see everything that the community keeps doing with semantic link notebooks and Power BI through the different contests that like Shannon's been doing and just in the gallery itself. So huge thank you to the community on this. And I'm so excited to see all the innovation that keeps happening.
I'll also just shamelessly plug some stuff as well there. Mm-hmm. So James Bartlett and myself have been doing a Learn Semantic Link Lab series on YouTube. So if you want to check that out as well, we'll make sure there's another link here in the description around Learn Semantic Link Labs. That's kind of like an ancillary topic against what's already happening here. But again, notebooks are the way to go. I think they're fun. I love working in them. It shouldn't be scary for anyone to get in and use them. And then these two tools, Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs, really provide a wealth of functionality for you to manage your Fabric environment, your notebooks, your semantic models, reports even. You can do a whole bunch of really neat things in there using these really rich tools from Microsoft. So I want to encourage you to learn more about those spaces. And Emily, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being on the podcast and discussing this really cool feature that I love. I use it fairly frequently. And I think the community should learn more about this as well. With that being said, thank you all so much. We know you can spend your time anywhere else doing other things, like getting actual work done for once. So we do appreciate you spending an hour with us this in the morning to get through your podcast. Hopefully you've had a good run or exercise or whatever you're doing to get into work this morning, and you've enjoyed some of this topic around one-click notebooks directly from semantic models. That being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. If you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast, leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of powerbi.tips social media channels.
Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.